The first time I walked into a bank barn outside Strasburg in Lancaster County, it was the middle of August. I expected old wood to smell tired. I expected dust. I expected the sour sweetness of hay. I expected the hot metallic bite of nails. I expected that dry crackle you hear when sun-cooked boards are one season from splitting. What I found instead changed something in me. The air inside was cooler than the yard. Not cold, just steady. The light came in soft and white through the slats. No glossy film, no peeling skin, no plastic sheen catching the sun. I put my hand against a chestnut post near the threshing floor. It felt dry and chalky. It felt alive, like stone dust had learned how to breathe. I stood there for 11 minutes looking for the expected failure. It was not there. No blisters, no soft corners, no dark mildew blooms under a shiny coat. The post held tool marks older than my grandparents. The lower boards had seen rain, manure, August heat, and freeze-thaw winters. They were still doing their job, quietly. Then I noticed the smell. Not latex, not solvent, not that sweet chemical fog that clings to fresh paint. It smelled mineral, clean, almost like wet stone after a summer storm. Outside, cicadas were screaming in the hedgerow. Inside, all I heard was one swallow and the creak of harness leather shifting in the dark. That is when I understood I had been wrong about everything. I had been trained to think protection meant sealing. I had been sold the idea that wood survives by being wrapped, skinned, and trapped under a modern membrane. Standing there with wagon tires ticking as they cooled outside, I realized the opposite was true. The wood lived because it was allowed to dry. I went back in October, then again in February, then once more in May after 3 days of hard rain. Every time I found the same thing: boards that took water, shed water, and gave moisture back to the air before rot ever got its turn. No compressor, no exotic chemistry, no endless repaint cycle, just a mineral wash and a protein binder so ordinary you already have versions of both in the nearest farm town. The second visit changed me even more. Frost sat on the fence rails. My breath stayed visible in the lane. Yet the siding still felt hard and dry under my glove. Not slick, not swollen, not glassy. The coat on the boards looked humble, the way work often does when it has nothing to prove. By spring, I started looking closer at every failed painted shed I passed. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Peeling started where moisture got trapped. Rot started where glossy coatings held dampness against the grain. The failure was not mysterious. It was mechanical. Water went in. Vapor could not get out. The clock started ticking. I have been going back to Lancaster County every season for 3 years, and every time I find something the building industry forgot on purpose. Here is the promise. By the time this is over, you will understand why a batch costing $18.73 to $27.41 can protect exterior wood for decades. You will also understand why a 12.4 pH finish frightens any company living off repeat repaint cycles. And yes, this works if your house was built 50 years ago. It works if you live in a city. It works if you have never done this before. Stay with me, because what I found in Lancaster County uses the same physics the Egyptians used. They kept sun-baked walls alive more than 3,000 years ago. The science is almost embarrassingly simple. Wood rots when 3 things overlap for long enough: food, oxygen, and moisture. You cannot remove food. The wood is the food. You cannot remove oxygen. The air is everywhere. So the lever that matters is moisture. The USDA Forest Products Laboratory has repeated the same warning for years. Decay fungi do not keep spreading below roughly 20% moisture content. They thrive once wood stays wet long enough to climb far above that line. So your finish has one job, actually 2 jobs. It must slow bulk water from soaking in, and it must let trapped vapor leave again fast. That is the whole game. The National Park Service says Limewash helps buildings breathe. It lets trapped moisture pass out, reduces mildew, and slows the deterioration of wood. That is not folklore. That is hygrothermal control. Calcium hydroxide starts highly alkaline, near pH 12.4. Casein from milk reacts with lime and forms calcium caseinate. That becomes a hard binder when it dries. Salt helps early set and surface bite. A little boiled linseed oil improves water shedding. You are not coating the wood in plastic. You are building a breathable mineral skin that hardens, reflects light, and stays hostile to mold in its early cure. Think about your own body on a hot day. Sweat cools you only if it can evaporate. Wrap your arm in plastic and the heat stays trapped. Wood works the same way. A plastic-like film traps trouble. A mineral protein wash sheds rain, then lets vapor escape. In building science terms, that is a 2-to-1 protection coefficient. 2 forms of moisture control for every 1 thin coat you brush on. A film finish gives you one-way resistance, then punishes you if water gets behind it. That is why old boards sometimes survive under simple finishes, while newer coated boards fail faster. The finish does not win by being tougher. It wins by working with the drying cycle instead of fighting it. Nobody told you. Not your builder. Not your contractor. Not the man who sold you a 5-gallon bucket. The National Park Service also notes this. When Limewash is used on roofs, it can reduce inside temperatures by up to 10 degrees. That matters because heat drives expansion, shrinking, checking, and finish failure. Less heat means less stress. Less stress means longer service. One low-cost coat handles water, vapor, and biological pressure at once. Conventional repaint systems sell you primer, top coat, mildew additive, and the labor to keep buying them. That gap represents a massive market in products, contracts, and service every year. And that is why you have never heard of this. The proof stopped being theoretical for me in East Lampeter Township. I stepped from a gravel drive into another whitewashed outbuilding just after dawn. The morning was 58 degrees outside. Inside, it felt still. I heard hens, one hand pump, and nothing else. No fan motor, no dehumidifier, no box store smell of latex drying in a damp room. I ran my finger across a board by the doorway. I got a faint white dust on my thumb, not flaking paint. A man named Eli laughed when I asked how often they worried about rot on that side of the building. He told me, plain as weather, if the wood can dry, it can live. Then he pointed to a ledger. His grandfather had copied it from his own father. The mix, he said, had been used in their family for 4 generations. The older men had carried the practice through Pennsylvania German farm country from the Palatinate. That was long before anyone sold acrylic by the gallon. His wife Lydia brought out coffee in plain mugs and said the same thing another way. "You do not fight wood," she told me. "You keep it honest." That line stayed with me. No jargon, no brochure language, just a farmer's sentence built from observation. Later that week, I checked the paper trail. USDA Farmers Bulletin number 1452, Painting on the Farm, was reprinted in 1937 from the April 1925 edition. It states that full directions for making and applying several kinds of whitewash were included. The government once treated this as normal farm knowledge. Penn State's agricultural archives are full of farm maintenance literature from the same world. This was not fringe knowledge. It was standard knowledge. Farm wives knew it. Carpenters knew it. Children saw the buckets mixed in spring. The secret was never complexity. The secret was ordinary people remembering what worked best. The deeper you go, the older it gets. In ancient Egypt, workers used lime-bound coatings on walls exposed to brutal desert swings. Daytime heat could pass 100 degrees, and nights dropped fast. The point was never decoration alone. It was sacrificial protection and reflectance. In Rome, Builders used lime-based washes on masonry and service structures, slaked lime carbonated back toward stone, and kept surfaces vapor open instead of sealing dampness behind a film. Then look east. In traditional Korean practice, lime-rich and earth-rich coatings appeared around timber and ondel-heated structures. Hot interiors and cold exterior surfaces punish any finish that traps moisture. Medieval Germans reached the same answer in lime-coated farm buildings and timber structures. Those buildings needed to survive wet winters without rotting from the inside. Different climates, different languages. Same solution. The Romans did not read this in a textbook. They figured it out the way all real knowledge gets discovered, by paying attention to what the earth was already doing. Every civilization that mastered extreme moisture and heat arrived at the same answer independently. The Amish never forgot. They carried it from the Palatinate to Pennsylvania 300 years ago. They kept building it because it worked. They never needed anyone's permission to do what made sense. Now you get to the part that should make you angry. The break happened when coating stopped being a craft and became a volume business. In 1941, Sherwin-Williams introduced Chemtone wall finish, the first commercially successful durable waterborne interior paint, according to the American Chemical Society. The company had found a way to turn fast application and mass distribution into habit. What threatened that habit was not just another brand. It was every low-cost, farm-made coating that used common ingredients and cut repeat sales to almost nothing. Here is how the suppression worked. It did not happen with one dramatic ban. It happened by changing what counted as legitimate. USDA Farmers Bulletin 1452 treated whitewash as ordinary farm maintenance in 1925 and 1937. Post-war trade literature shifted attention to washability, color retention, roller speed, and branded convenience. The American Chemical Society's History of Chemtone says the product permanently changed architectural painting habits in the United States. That sentence matters. Habits became markets, markets became standards, standards became memory. Then the paper trail gets even clearer. Harriet Standevin's Getty study of house paints records the next turn. By 1978, acrylic emulsions had practically replaced oil-based paints for the domestic market. Rohm and Haas had sold more than $58 million of acrylic emulsion paints in the United States by 1975. Once the market was tied to proprietary resin systems, the old quarry and dairy finishes stopped looking old-fashioned. They started looking dangerous to profit. The allies were real. Sherwin-Williams benefited from volume. Rohm and Haas benefited from synthetic resin sales. Government opened the door during wartime rationing of linseed oil and the post-war standardization of mass housing materials. Trade magazines and home improvement media normalized the new default because the new default bought ads, filled pages, and promised modern speed. That is how memory gets edited, quietly. An entire field of knowledge disappeared from farm manuals, trade schools, and ordinary repair culture. Not because it failed, because it was not profitable. And the continuation is not ancient history. Open Secrets reports that the American Coatings Association spent $80,000 lobbying in 2022 alone. ChemQuest, writing with the American Coatings Association, valued the total U.S. coatings market at $34.1 billion for 2023. That money does not exist to teach you how to mix hydrated lime and milk in a bucket. It exists to protect a system built on branded coatings, repeat maintenance, and shelf space. Nobody told you. Not your builder, not your contractor. Not the man who sold you another weekend. The paint and coatings market in America is worth $34.1 billion a year. Every alternative brushed on at home is one less bucket sold, refilled, replaced, and renewed. Now, if you already own a house and you're thinking this only applies to people with land, stay with me. because this next part is specifically for you. You don't need to tear up your foundation, rip out your existing system, or buy equipment. You need one thing they already have, or can easily get: a yard, a drill, a bottle, a weekend. Here is the blueprint I wish someone had handed me years ago. Start with wood that can actually accept the wash. If it is covered in glossy acrylic, scrape until the sheen is gone. You do not need bare furniture-grade timber. You do need an absorbent surface. Sweep off dirt, knock off loose fibers, open any clogged grain with 80 grit paper on the worst spots. For a first batch, use 1 gallon of skim milk. Add 6 to 8 cups of type S hydrated lime. Then add 1 cup of fine salt and 4 to 6 tablespoons of boiled linseed oil. If you want color, add 8 to 12 ounces of red iron oxide or earth pigment. Mix in a 5-gallon plastic bucket, not metal. Stir with a wooden stick until it looks like thin cream. Then leave it alone for 20 to 30 minutes so the lime fully wets out. Then strain it, always. A paint strainer bag or muslin cotton costs $3 to $7 and saves you from lumps that drag under the brush. Wet the wood lightly first, not soaked, just damp. Use a 4-inch masonry brush or a 5-inch block brush. Work the wash hard into the grain. 2 thin coats beat 1 thick coat every time. Put the second coat on after 18 to 24 hours. When the first coat has gone matte and no longer feels cool, pay attention to the weather. Do not apply it below 50 degrees. Do not apply it above 85 degrees in direct afternoon sun. Early morning and late afternoon are ideal. If wind is strong, lightly mist the wall before each pass. That keeps the coat from flash drying and dusting off before it bonds. For fences and sheds, start 6 inches above grade. Finish the lowest area last so drips do not build at the bottom edge. On siding, keep each stroke with the grain and overlap by 2 inches. On board and batten walls, load the battens first, then the field boards. If you are treating posts, soak the splash zone from 0 to 18 inches above grade. Keep soil at least 2 inches below the wood. Water is the enemy. Air is the cure. If the building has bad drainage, fix that before you touch a brush. Add a 5% slope away from the wall for the first 24 inches of ground if you can. Keep mulch off the siding. Keep vines off the boards. Trim grass back so dew is not held against the bottom course all morning. Good finish over bad drainage is still bad building. If you want extra toughness on hard weather faces, brush a 3rd coat only on the west and south walls. That usually takes 1 Saturday morning on a coop. It takes 1 full weekend on a 120 square foot shed and 2 weekends on a detached garage. Material cost runs $18.73 to $27.41 for a plain white batch. It runs $29.60 to $44.85 with iron oxide pigment and extra linseed oil. That is not a typo. It is lunch money compared with repainting. You can also adjust the mix. For rough barn boards, stay closer to 8 cups of lime. For smoother siding, drop closer to 6 cups so the brush marks settle better. If the batch feels gummy, add 8 to 12 ounces of water. If it feels watery, wait 10 minutes, stir again, and test it on a scrap. You want coverage, not sludge. Type S hydrated lime is not optional. Garden lime causes weak bonding and powdery failure. Glossy sealed wood is not optional either. If the surface cannot absorb, the coating cannot lock in. What you get is not a plastic shell. It is a sacrificial mineral skin. On a 95-degree day, the lighter finish reflects heat and keeps the board surface steadier. In roof applications, the National Park Service says this kind of treatment can reduce inside temperatures by up to 10 degrees. In rain, the coat sheds bulk water first, then lets the board dry back out. That is why old barns survive. Maintenance is simple. Walk it once a year. Brush off dust. Spot wash any heavy splash zones. On hard weather faces, refresh every 3 to 5 years. On protected walls, you may go 6 to 8 years between touch-ups. South sides usually ask first. North sides usually ask later. And if you used good drainage, wide eaves, and airflow, the wood under it ages slowly instead of cooking under a skin. Your conventional paint job costs $2,800 to $7,400 to install on an outbuilding. It costs $41 to $96 per month to keep buying and maintaining over time. It lasts 7 to 12 years before it ends up in a landfill. This costs $18.73 to $44.85 total. It lasts as a system for decades. The wood beneath it can stay serviceable for 30 to 50 years. Your choice. Everything I've covered across this channel, root cellar airflow, gravity water storage, passive summer cooling, I've put it all in one place, step by step, season by season, room by room, in the order the families actually use it. The link is in the description, but stay here. Because what Eli showed me in that barn ledger is the part nobody is talking about yet. Because this is bigger than one wash. It is bigger than one barn. Once you see the pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. The old answer was cheap. It was local. It was repairable. So it had to be made invisible. If you're the kind of person who believes real knowledge has been pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, you already know what to do. Hit subscribe. Not for me. For what comes next. Because this is not a channel. This is a quiet movement of people who have decided they're done being sold what they already own. I want to hear from you. Drop the age of your oldest fence, shed, porch rail, or barn board in the comments. Then tell me what finish is on it right now. Tell me your state too. I read every single one. And your answers decide what we cover next. Next week, I'm going to show you what a 1946 Penn State document reveals. It is about keeping a summer room cooler with shade cloth, a vent path, and one reflective surface. The technique uses nothing but canvas, wood lath, and moving air. And the archived report from the post-war years proves this too. Building scientists knew the number long before anyone sold you powered comfort by the month. You are not going to want to miss that one.